Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the Gilman information session. My name is Shay Masterson with the Office of National Scholarships Advisement here at ASU to share with you about the Gilman Scholarship and the support that we provide to ASU students in pursuing the Gilman Scholarship. So today, just to give you an idea of what we'll be covering in the session, we'll start with some brief introductions. Those will be, since this is online, those will be some nice intros in the chat. Then I'm going to give you a basic overview of studying abroad as an ASU student. That is managed through a separate office than mine at ASU, so I am not the expert, but I will do my best to give you just the basics and who to connect with if you are going to study abroad. Then we'll go over just an introduction to the office that I do represent, the Office of National Scholarships Advisement, or ONSA, before we go into the details about the Gilman Scholarship itself. We will go over who's eligible, what the benefits are, what the application process is, and then we'll wrap up with what are the resources available to you as an ASU student applying for the Gilman Scholarship, and what are your next steps if you wish to apply for the Gilman Scholarship. All right, so before I jump into kind of study abroad in the presentation, I'll give everybody a moment to introduce themselves in the chat. So if you don't mind just sharing with the group your academic level, so like first year, third year, fourth year, and then if you have a specific study abroad program in mind, please say the kind of like the name of the study abroad program you'll be doing. Or if you don't, then just share a country or region that you'd like to visit. All right, so we'll give everybody about 30 seconds to type into the chat your academic level and either the name of the study abroad program you've already decided on or a country or region in the world you'd like to visit. All right, I see them coming in. Wonderful. Thank you. So somebody going to Greece, Spain, Scandinavia, Germany, Brazil, Japan. I also see a range of academic levels in the room with us this afternoon. That's wonderful. Costa Rica, Europe, Paris, Korea, Cambodia. Yes, that would be wonderful to see the elephants and work with the conservation efforts in Cambodia with them. Costa Rica, again, a couple people heading to Costa Rica, somewhere in Germany like Switzerland, somewhere in Europe like Switzerland or Germany, Europe, Thailand, Paris for fashion, Rome for Catholic studies. That would be a good place to go for that. I see Latin America, Korea, Japan, Canada. Oh, wonderful. Somebody applied to Gilman. That's another scholarship our office advises on, not to be confused with Gilman. Russian, studying Russian, Spain. Great, thank you so much. So great news is, those of you who haven't already picked a specific study abroad program, it sounds like the places that you want to go, there's ample opportunity to study abroad there at ASU and even outside of ASU. So you're going to have options to go there if you haven't already identified them. So thank you for taking that moment to introduce yourselves to me and one another in the room. And now we'll kind of jump into the presentation. Please, if you have questions, feel free to put those into the chat as you have them. If it is a question that I'm going to get to shortly in the presentation, I'll hold off on answering it. But I would, I do welcome your questions at any point. So again, for that study abroad overview, that's managed by our Global Education Office, or GEO, here at ASU. Separate office than what I represent, but our offices work very closely because many of the awards are, like Gilman, are to help you go abroad. So through the Global Education Office, there are over 300 different programs to approximately 65 different countries that you can participate in as an ASU student if you want to study abroad. So those of you in the room who, again, haven't already identified the specific study abroad program you want to go on may or may not have connected with the Global Education Office yet, but if you do study abroad, you will connect with them. And while you don't have to do an ASU study abroad program, they are a great starting point because they have so many different options. Through these study abroad programs, you can go for as little as a week or as long as a year. You can do research or internships, as well as study. You can do language study, but you don't have to be doing language study. So there's lots and lots of variety within the programs that are offered through the Global Education Office. Some of them are hosted or are kind of put on by specific academic colleges or units, but you don't necessarily have to be a part of that academic college or unit to participate in the program. For some you do, but not necessarily all of them. So keep that in mind. You're not limited to only what's offered by your academic college or major. In general, if you have a study abroad experience, students share that it really broadens their perspective on the world around them, but also themselves, their own skills, their own interests, their own capabilities as they move forward through their academic and professional journey. And it really helps students who maybe hadn't been as independent in life so far to gain some of that independence by having an abroad experience. Although you can go on a program where you are with ASU faculty and peers throughout the whole program. So that would be so that you have that extra support. So that might not foster as much independence as some of the other programs where you would be going more by yourself. But still, regardless, studying abroad does help you become more independent and oftentimes want to spread your wings even further. And we see, especially for those like first and second year students in the room who have a study abroad experience kind of early on, oftentimes it leads to further study abroad experiences in the future, which just continues to gain more and more independence in your life as you learn through these programs. And in today's world, it's an ever increasing global job market. Regardless of the field that you want to go into, you are going to find yourself interacting with people from around the world. You're going to have clients or customers or students or patients who are from different regions of the world, who have different cultural backgrounds, who maybe speak different languages. So whether you have like an international focused career in mind or not, you will be in the global job market. And so having a study abroad experience will really make you more competitive in that global job market. Unfortunately, only about 10% of undergraduate students ever study abroad during their, kind of bachelor's degree experience. And even fewer go abroad after that. So you're competing in this global job market against a vast majority of folks who haven't had a study abroad experience if you have. And it definitely should be put on your resume if you have any level of study abroad experience. So as I mentioned earlier, you can go through the Global Education Office for either a short-term or a long-term study abroad program. And there's really like four main types of programs that they offer. If you're looking for kind of a short-term study abroad program to go for like 1 to 2 weeks over a break, or maybe just like part of the summer, then you could look at the global intensive experiences. Those are typically 1 to 2 weeks and happen over spring break, winter break, or summer break. The summer break global intensive experiences often are right at the end, right after the end of the spring semester or right before the beginning of the fall semester. And then faculty-directed programs are a little bit longer over the summer, usually like a month long. Both faculty-directed programs and global intensive experiences are going to be where you go on the experience with faculty and staff from ASU and a cohort of ASU students going on the trip with you. So that's one where if you're looking for something short-term and or where you have a little bit more familiarity and support while you're abroad that's from ASU, you can pick one of those types of programs. Partnership programs can also sometimes be shorter, but they can also be longer. These are programs that are offered by external entities from ASU. So they can be international universities, they can be international education program providers, and they've partnered with ASU to offer some of their programs to ASU students. In these experiences, you'll usually be with a cohort of US students from across the country. So not necessarily a bunch of ASU students, but still with some other US based students. And you'll have the support of the partnership programs, faculty or staff while you're on that experience as well, typically. Exchange programs are what students typically think of when they hear study abroad. That's what back in my day, that's what a study abroad experience was more of an exchange where you as an individual student from the United States would go to another country for a semester or academic year. You would be enrolled in courses at a university in that country. You would live either in like the dorms or a homestay, right? That's kind of that more traditional exchange experience through the study abroad opportunities. Any and all of these would be great experiences and help you develop your skills, broaden your perspective, and build your independence. For studying abroad in general, you do have to have a 2.0 GPA. If you have lower than a 2.0 GPA, they want you to get a little bit more stable here in your academics before going abroad. Some programs will have a higher GPA requirement though, so it's important to pay attention to the individual program requirements. And this is going to be the same as if you go for an outside of ASU study abroad program. Some will also have other requirements, like maybe they have prerequisite courses that you've had to take. Maybe they want you to have some language skills in the local language, although there are many, many study abroad programs that don't require any level of language proficiency. So that should not narrow down your choices of where to go very much. But some programs do require that. So it's just important to note whatever the prerequisites are for an individual program. But depending on where you're at in terms of academically, what you're studying, whether you have language skills or not, there's going to be a lot of options. Here's a list of most of the countries that ASU has study abroad programs to. On the left-hand side, you're going to see where can you go preferred non-traditional destinations. That's preferred for the Gilman scholarship specifically. So if you go to a non-traditional destination and apply for the Gilman scholarship, it can slightly increase your odds of being selected for the scholarship. And we're going to go into that a little bit more later on. And then the other side of the screen is the other possible destinations, which is really the traditional study abroad destinations, which are, if you kind of think about it in this way, it's mostly Western European countries and English-speaking countries that are in those traditional destinations. You absolutely can still go to these destinations as a Gilman scholar. It's just a little bit more competitive if you're going to one of these traditional destinations. But as you can see, lots and lots of different options for regions of the world and specific countries. We often get asked, well, how much does it cost to study abroad? And the answer is it's going to vary greatly by the individual program. Where you're going, how long you're going for, what is involved as part of the program is all going to vary. In theory, the short-term programs are usually a little less expensive overall than the long-term programs, although ASU does have a study abroad program to Antarctica, which I've heard absolutely amazing things for, which is a short-term study abroad program over winter break, but it's also one of the most expensive ones because going to Antarctica is really expensive. But generally speaking, short-term ones are typically a little bit more affordable than long-term ones. Different countries and different regions of the world can also be more affordable. Therefore, programs to those places can be more affordable sometimes. But again, it all depends. If you're looking at ASU programs, you will see a cost breakdown sheet that looks similar to what you're seeing on the screen right now. I know you can't see the fine detail likely on the screen, and that's okay. Just to give you an idea that they do have a cost breakdown of nearly all of the programs they offer. And if you're looking external from ASU, they usually have a cost breakdown as well. What I do want to point out is in the ASU programs, it'll be broken down into billable subtotal and non-billable subtotal. The billable subtotal is everything that is going to get charged to your ASU account for that study abroad experience, and that oftentimes you can use your ASU financial aid package to pay. Also, if you are applying for ASU study abroad scholarships, that billable subtotal is typically what it will be used towards, okay? The non-billable subtotal are oftentimes estimates, and it has to do with like airfare, room and board if that's not a part of the program tuition and fees. Sometimes if you may need to get your passport if you don't already have one. Sometimes there's special visas or vaccinations you have to get for particular destinations, other things like that. These are costs that are not billed to your ASU account. And oftentimes your the ASU study abroad scholarships that you receive, if you apply for them and are selected, will usually not go towards your non-billable costs. The Gilman scholarship can be applied to either billable or non-billable subtotal for your study abroad experience, okay? If you are an Obama scholar, that is one of the scholarships that for sure you can use for studying abroad. However, it would only be applicable if you were doing an exchange program for a semester as part of your 8 semesters in which you receive the Obama scholarship, okay? This is very likely the case for other tuition-based scholarships as well, but you always need to confirm anything in terms of your financial aid package and how it will be applied or altered depending on your study abroad plans with financial aid and scholarship services, okay? Neither myself nor the folks in the Global Education Office can answer those questions with absolute certainty. If you are an Obama scholar, you do have to already have 1 year at ASU completed. And again, the scholarship can only be applied towards 1 semester of an exchange program specifically, where you go for that full semester as an individual student to that university enrolling courses. If you want to hear a little bit more about study abroad in general at ASU, you can go to the Global Education Office's Study Abroad 101 workshops, which are offered twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays, hybrid. So the in-person component is on the Tempe campus, and then the virtual is on Zoom. So regardless of where you're at, you can always access those, and they go over a more elongated version of what you've heard so far in today's presentation. They also have a financing workshop that they offer every other week, which does touch on the Gilman Scholarship and refer you to our office for more about the Gilman Scholarship. But then it also covers some other ways to fund your global education experience, like the ASU scholarships, like other methods that ASU students have used in the past to fund their study abroad experience. That's also offered hybrid, so in person on the Tempe campus or on Zoom. For specific study abroad programs, you do have to apply to the program itself. And here's the deadlines depending on when you're looking at studying abroad. If you are planning to participate in a post-spring study abroad program, those are global intensive experiences that happen right after the spring semester ends. That deadline has passed. So you should have already applied to those. If you're planning to do a summer program that is not a post-spring program, but just during one of the sessions during the summer, so these ones tend to be a month or a couple months long, that deadline is coming up on March 1st. If you're planning to study abroad further out into the future, you've got some time. Those program applications are typically open about 3 or so months prior to the deadline, and the applications are accepted on a revolving basis. So the earlier you apply, the better, because slots can get full for the program itself. The Gilman Scholarship, you do not need to apply early for before the deadline. The program itself, it's beneficial to apply before the deadline if you already know you would like to go on that program. If you would like to hear more from the Global Education Office, you can contact them, view their website, or fill out the form that this QR code will take you to ask for somebody from the Global Education Office to contact you. If you've already been connected with the Global Education Office, if you've already picked out a study abroad program, if you've already applied to a study abroad program, you hopefully already have been in contact with them and have a specific contact that you are communicating with. But here's if you're just kind of starting out. Okay, so that's the basics that I can tell you about studying abroad in general through ASU. Again, the Global Education Office will be here to support you to study abroad and give you more information and answer more detailed questions about studying abroad or about any particular programs ASU offers. So what is it that I do and the office that I represent? So the Office of National Scholarships Advisement here at ASU provides support to ASU students and alumni, because some awards are available for after you graduate as well, to apply for competitive external awards. So these are all awards that are funded by national or international sources, and that therefore students from across the country and sometimes across the globe can apply for them. So that does make them pretty competitive. And our job is to help ASU students and alumni put forth their strongest applications possible for the awards that make the most sense for them, given their own interests, their own goals, and their own eligibility. So we do information sessions like this. We do advising for students to identify awards they might want to apply for. And then once any student or alumni decides to apply for one of the dozens of awards we advise on, we'll provide guidance and feedback through the entire application process. So you don't have to do it on your own. We're here to give you that support throughout that process. If you apply for one of these awards that requires an interview, then we will also help you prepare for that interview. The Gilman Scholarship does not have an interview component, but if so, for another award, we would support you with. Now, this doesn't go for scholarships in general. It is the specific subset of scholarships that our office advises on, but there are dozens of them. Many of them can help you study abroad. That's why we work closely with the Global Education Office, but not all of them are even study abroad focused. So if you want to hear more about like just national scholarships in general, we do have a general information session like this one that's more broad and not specifically about Gilman that we offer once a month virtually. So that's something that you can check out for more information about ONSA and national scholarships. One of those dozens of awards we advise on, though, is the Gilman International Scholarship. This program has been around since the early 2000s. It was established by Congress and funded by the U.S. Department of State to help U.S. students study abroad, and specifically to help students who have previously been underrepresented or not been able to engage in study abroad experiences, especially because of finances, right? Studying abroad is really expensive. So historically, only those who could afford the extra thousands of dollars on top of what school already costs to have a study abroad experience were the ones who did it. So the Gilman Scholarship, among many others, have been developed to help students who may not be able to study abroad do so. And the other kind of goal of the Gilman Scholarship has been to broaden where students are studying abroad from the United States. So remember back when we had that screen a few moments ago that said, where can you go in the world? And there was those preferred non-traditional destinations. So part of the Gilman Scholarship purpose is to broaden where students are studying abroad, to send students to more countries and more regions of the world than they've historically been going. And so that's why if you are going to one of those destinations, they do have that slight preference. What I mean by slight preference is if your application is as strong as another application and you're going to one of the traditional destinations, but that other applicant is going to a non-traditional destination, they get that slight advantage over you. But if their application is not as strong as yours, it doesn't really matter, right? You'd still get selected for having for a traditional destination with a strong application. I did just get a question come through that asked if this scholarship is likely to be affected by administrative changes. And unfortunately, I do not have an answer for that. I know if you're unfamiliar, there's been a lot of news as of late about halting or pausing or completely ending funding for a variety of programs that are federally funded, which this is one. The answer is, as of right now, it hasn't been paused, this particular award. What the future holds, I do not know. I cannot answer that. But as of right now, this cycle is going forward. So who's eligible for this amazing program? Because it is Department of State funded, you do have to be a U.S. citizen to be eligible for the scholarship. You also have to be a current undergraduate student both now and when you study abroad. So you can't apply for it for future use after your graduation. The only exception here is if you are a graduating senior who is applying for a post-spring study abroad program. So say you're going to graduate in May and you're going to study abroad immediately after graduation as part of one of those post-spring study abroad programs, then that counts as part of your spring semester. So even though it's technically after graduation, it is part of your final semester of your undergraduate studies. I just got a question about those traditional destinations. These slides are going to be shared out as well as the recording of the information session. It'll likely get posted on Monday, so that's when I'll send it out and you'll be able to refer back to it. Additionally, to being an undergraduate student, you do have to be attending a credit-bearing study abroad program. So there are study abroad options that are not credit-bearing. And if you're pursuing one of those, unfortunately, that wouldn't be Gilman eligible. But as long as it's eligible, the program itself is worth credit back at ASU, then you're fine. The ASU Global Education Office programs are typically eligible for ASU credit, so you don't have to worry about it there. If you're going to an external program, that's when you have to do a little bit more research and due diligence on your end to confirm whether it's credit bearing or not. And then for the Gilman Scholarship, you do have to be a Pell Grant recipient. So that does not mean Pell Grant eligible. It does mean you have to actually be receiving the Pell Grant either when you apply for the study abroad program or when you are going abroad. If you're a Pell Grant recipient for both of those terms, great. But as long as you're eligible to receive the scholarship, as long as you're receiving the Pell Grant for one of those terms, then you would be eligible. And a question that I've just passed the information on, so I'm going to address, is there a minimum credit requirement for eligibility? And the answer is no. As long as it's worth one or more credits, and there shouldn't be a maximum credit either, in case that's a question. There also is, in addition to the Gilman Scholarship, there is also the Gilman-McCain Scholarship. The Gilman-McCain Scholarship eligibility, the first three check marks on this screen are the same for both Gilman and Gilman-McCain. But that fourth one is not the same for Gilman-McCain. Gilman-McCain is specifically for dependents, either spousal or child dependents of active duty military members, not veterans, but active duty military members, who are receiving any title for federal funding. So that includes the Pell Grant, but it also includes federal loans, federal work study, other federal financial need grants. So there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of qualifying on the financial side for Gilman-McCain, but then there is that narrowed eligibility of being a dependent of an active duty military member. The applications are the same, the deadline is the same, the application portal is the same. There's anything else different about the eligibility or the process besides those two slight differences, the fourth and fifth check mark in the eligibility. So if you are selected for the Gilman Scholarship, what will you get? You'll get up to $5,000 for your study abroad expenses. Again, billable or non-billable study abroad experiences. We say up to because not every student who receives the scholarship will receive $5,000. In fact, the average Gilman scholar receives about $3,500. So it is likely that you would be selected but not receive the $5,000. This is dependent on your overall need, meaning how much does your program cost compared to how much financial aid besides loans you already have to help fund your study abroad experience, right? So if the program costs less or you already have other awards that are earmarked for the study abroad program, then you might get less than somebody who has a more expensive study abroad program or doesn't have any other funds to help cover their study abroad expenses already. It also depends on the strength of your application. So if you are in, the top 10% of the applicants, then you might get a little bit more than the top 20% of applicants who also still get selected for the award, but maybe not as much. Thank you so much, Kai. You are so correct. There is a slight difference in the application process. You do have to upload documentation proving that you're a dependent of an active duty military member. So there is some documentation you have to provide for the Gilman-McCain application. I apologize. Thank you for pointing that out for anybody else who also needed to hear that. In addition to the Gilman Scholarship, there are 2 supplemental awards that you can apply for if eligible. If you are going to be studying a critical need language, and these are 16 specific languages that for the Gilman Scholarship, they have deemed as critical need, then you can apply for the supplemental award of $3,000, okay? So it ups the total amount that you are eligible for to $8,000. I have seen students who are studying a critical need language while abroad receive the full $8,000, but it also will depend on the cost of your program, the strength of your application, and all of that. If you're eligible for the critical need language supplement, you do have to submit an additional essay with your application to be considered for it. If you're going to be conducting STEM research while you are abroad, then you're eligible to apply for the additional $1,000 through the STEM supplement, which increases the total amount to up to $6,000, or in a very rare instance, you could potentially be eligible for up to $9,000 if you were going to be doing STEM research and critical language study. And then I just got a question about whether Spanish is a critical language. For the Gilman purposes, it is not. And one of the main reasons is because it is commonly taught and more commonly known within the United States than a lot of the languages that are considered critical need language. So most of those languages are Eastern European, Russian, and some African languages. The one like Latin American language or Western European language is Portuguese, but other than that, everything else would be Eastern European, Asian, or African languages. In addition to the financial benefit of the Gilman Scholarship, there's also 2 other benefits. One is the alumni network. So the Gilman Scholarship program has about 40 to 50,000 alumni at this point in time because they've been around for over 20 years. And so that alumni network can be really beneficial in engaging or in connecting with folks who are maybe in the fields that you want to go into, maybe working in the regions of the world that you want to go into, maybe doing other things that are really interesting to you. And so connecting with those folks through that network can be really valuable. It can lead to mentorship, internship, all of that great stuff. But then there's also programs that Gilman provides specifically to members of the Gilman Alumni Network. So sometimes there's opportunities to attend conferences or engage in ambassadorial programming or other things that are only available to those who have previously received the Gilman Scholarship. And then last but not least, you are also eligible for non-competitive eligibility for federal employment once you're a Gilman Scholar for up to 1 or 2 years after your study abroad experience. So what that means is if you apply for a federal position, internship, or full-time job that you're eligible for, you will get bumped to the top of the list of consideration for that position with non-competitive eligibility. There are a few other awards we advise on that offer non-competitive eligibility for federal employment as well. I've gotten a few questions about what languages, if there are specific languages that would be considered critical need language for the Gilman Scholarship. So I'm going to refer you to the Gilman website to see whether any specific languages are part of that, are considered critical need language for this specific scholarship. So give me just one moment. And actually, I'm gonna copy and paste the languages in the chat. And then here's the link where I'm finding that information as well. Okay. And then a couple other questions came through before I move on to the next slide. So for the STEM research, is it necessary that the program be research, or is a STEM-based program qualified? No, it does have to be a STEM research program that you're engaging in while abroad. For federal internship or employment, I believe an opportunity with NASA would be considered a federal internship or employment. It is a federal-based agency, so that should qualify. Again, if you don't meet the eligibility for the position, though, it's not going to help you. Like, you still have to meet the minimum eligibility for any position, internship or otherwise, but then it would help you be considered before other folks who are also eligible. All right. So not everybody who's eligible receives the scholarship, though, right? So what are they actually looking for in their selection criteria? They want to hear about, through your application materials, what are your academic and professional goals? What are you studying now, and to what end in the future? You don't have to have a very specific career path 100% solidified for yourself. You don't have to know where you're going to be in 5 or 20 years from now, but to have an idea of the kinds of things you think you want to accomplish academically and professionally. And beyond that, they want to hear about how your specific program that you've chosen for studying abroad and the destination that you've chosen for your study abroad program will help support you in achieving the academic and professional goals that you've outlined. So these should be as specific to you, your goals, and your study abroad plans as possible. It would not suffice to say, my academic goal is to study abroad, and this program to X country for this reason will help me experience a study abroad. Everybody applying can say that. That's not going to help. Okay, so it should be as specific to your individual goals and the program you've chosen as possible. They also want to know within reason through your application materials that you are prepared to be successful while abroad. So they do look at your transcripts, although that's only a small component of it. They also want to hear about experiences you've had, skills you've developed that will show you'll be successful abroad. This can be experiences and skills dealing with academically rigorous schedules. It can be dealing with living and learning in new places and environments. It can be interacting with people from different backgrounds or speaking different languages. It can be if you have language skills in the country that you'll be visiting, whether that's a part of the program or not. So what are all of these skills and experiences that will tell the reader you're probably going to be able to adjust and do well in your study abroad program? And then they also want to know about your community impact. And what this means is, how are you going to engage with your host community while you're abroad in a meaningful way? And how will you, upon your return, engage with your home community by doing some kind of project that will inform and inspire others to study abroad? So we're going to break this down a little bit further with the application component. So what components will speak to those selection criteria? So first off, there is the basic demographic and academic background. There's also verification that you have to provide if you're applying for Gilman-McCain specifically. You also have to submit unofficial transcripts from ASU and any other colleges or universities you've attended. If you got dual enrollment credit while you were in high school, you do not need unofficial transcripts from that college or university. It's if after high school you attended independently a college or university before you came to ASU, then you need to include those unofficial transcripts. Even if you've attended multiple institutions, you want to include transcripts from all institutions attended. The only time they want to see high school transcripts or anything from when you were in high school is if you are applying in your first semester of your college experience, which for spring semester is not typically the case for anybody. But if you are in your first semester of college, when you apply for Gilman, you would include your college transcripts to show you're currently enrolled and your high school transcripts. Then there are 3 required essays. This is where you're going to break down and show the reader how you meet the selection criteria. So with the statement of purpose, it's where you're going to talk about in 7,000 characters or less, including spaces. It's where you're going to talk about your academic and professional goals, your study abroad program plans, how your study abroad program will help you achieve your academic and professional goals, and the skills or experiences you've had to show them you will be successful while you're abroad. Then the 2 shorter community impact essays, which are 3,000 characters or less each, are the Building Mutual Understanding essay, where you'll talk about how you plan to engage with your host community while you're abroad so that you can gain a better understanding of who they are, what their culture is, what their history is, and help them better understand who you are as an American. The last one is the follow-on service project. So every Gilman scholar is expected to complete what's called the follow-on service project within 6 months of your return from your study abroad experience. So this project should in some way inform and inspire others to study abroad in the future. And to know that there's resources like the Gilman Scholarship available to help study abroad. Okay, so this can be a presentation for a class that you're a part of. It can be doing some kind of activity with the youth league that you coach up as part of. It can be going back to your middle school and working with like their world history teacher to do some kind of activity or presentation for the students. So the possibilities are really endless of what you could do, as long as the target audience is folks who could potentially study abroad in the future and likely apply for the Gilman Scholarship if eligible, and that the project in some way would highlight your study abroad experience in such a way to make them also want to study abroad. Okay, so if you're going to come back and continue volunteering at the retirement community, local retirement community, that is commendable, and you should absolutely continue doing that. But that is not the kind of community impact they're referring to with this particular scholarship. Okay. If you are applying for the critical need language supplement or the STEM supplement, each one of those will require an additional essay that's a maximum of 2,000 characters. So it's very, very brief, where you talk about your plans to study the language and why, or your plans to do STEM research and why. Okay. And then, yes, documentation of your spouse or parents' active duty military status. All right, so to apply for the Gilman Scholarship, the timeline's a little bit different than those program deadlines through the Global Education Office. So there's 2 deadlines each and every year. We are currently in the springtime deadline. So the application opened in mid-January. We are just past it opening right now. And the deadline will be the first Thursday of March, which this year is March 6th. So the application is typically open for 6 to 8 weeks if you're thinking ahead and going to apply in the future. But generally, that's the spring deadline. If you're going to apply in the spring deadline, your study abroad plans have to begin sometime between May of this year and April 30th of next year. So this could be a post-spring study abroad program, a summer study abroad program, a pre-fall study abroad program, a fall semester study abroad program, a winter break study abroad program, a spring break study abroad program, or a spring break of next year, or of academic year program, okay? But it cannot cover something that is before May 1st of this year or after April 30th of next year. If your plans to study abroad are a little bit further out in advance, then you may want to wait for the fall deadline, which will open around the time the fall semester begins, so usually like end of August, beginning of September, and then be due the first Thursday of Thursday. I have October 10th listed here. I need to confirm that's right. I'm not sure if that's a typo, but generally it's the first Thursday of October. And then decisions will go out 2 months later, and those awards can be for anybody who's studying abroad between December 1st of this year and October 31st of next year, okay? So there's some overlap there. So you can be planning out in advance. And if you are, there's the option to apply again in the next cycle if your study abroad program hasn't occurred yet, if you don't get selected now. If you get selected and receive the funds, you cannot apply again. But if you apply and don't receive the funds, then you could apply again in the future. In addition, your application has to be certified by 2 advisors at ASU, and they have 1 week from your deadline. So it's the second week in March that is the certification deadline, where they have to certify that the information you've provided regarding your study abroad plans and regarding your financial aid is accurate. Okay, so they're not saying you should give this person the scholarship or not. They're not doing anything like that. They're really just confirming that the information you've provided for the study abroad advisor regarding the study abroad program, for the financial aid advisor regarding the financial aid information you've provided. Okay, they're just confirming that that information is accurate and correcting anything if you had given incorrect information. The study abroad advisor is whoever the international coordinator for your particular program through the Global Education Office is. It's not me, even though I'm going to help you with your Gilman application. It's a person from the Global Education Office. The financial aid advisor is any person listed. It doesn't matter who you select. You do not need to contact them. You do not have to meet with them. You do not have to know them. What you do have to do is complete the consent to release records form, which is the QR code and link that are on this page. And those both have to be, that has to be submitted before the deadline in order for financial aid to certify your application. This is just you saying, I give permission to my financial aid office to verify my information for Gilman, okay? Thank you for that question, and somebody answered, but I'm just going to clarify. So the advisor certification is due 1 week after your application deadline, okay? So they certify that your application is accurate 1 week after your deadline has passed and before any notifications are done, okay? So as you go forward, your next steps, if you have not already, you must select a study abroad program. For the Gilman Scholarship, you do not have to have already applied to the study abroad program. So if you're planning out in advance, it's okay if you haven't applied to the program as long as you've selected it, okay? Because you're going to have to give information about your study abroad plans in your application, okay? So you have to do that, and I am not the expert to help you do that. The Global Education Office is. You also will want to open a Gilman application. You don't have to complete the application in one sitting, so open it sooner rather than later so you can access the portal, kind of see what it's about, get a sense of things. And then you're able to schedule an intake appointment, a Gilman intake appointment with our office, where we will further break down those essays and give you guidance on how to approach those essays. Okay, so before you get started with the essays, you can have an intake appointment to further break that down. Once you have an intake appointment and or open an application, you will also be invited to enroll in the ONSA Canvas course. This course includes a section on the Gilman application. That section provides general information like I've just provided to you here today, and it also provides guidance on the essays, okay? Once you've started writing your essays, you can get feedback on those by either scheduling a draft review appointment with our office or emailing me directly for feedback via email, okay? Please do not do this on your own. The Gilman Scholarship is competitive. Only about 1 in 4 students who apply in any given cycle are selected. Students who work with our office and go through at least 2 to 3 draft revisions on their essays before submitting usually are selected at double, if not more than double that rate, okay? That's because I'm here to help you to make sure you're hitting the selection criteria points in your essay as needed. And so please use this resource. I do recommend planning to go through at least 2 to 3 drafts of your essays before submitting to give yourself the best chance of really submitting strong essays. And in between those drafts, again, getting feedback from our office. Okay. You can also get feedback from other folks in your network. Go to the Writing Center, a professor. If you have a friend or a peer who has done a Gilman Scholarship application before, great. But do not forget about our support. Okay. A couple other words that you might want to consider depending on when and where and for how long you're studying abroad. The Fund for Education Abroad, that deadline has passed for the current cycle. So if your plans to study abroad are this summer or next fall, Fund for Education Abroad is not an option anymore. But if you're planning out further in advance, the Fund for Education Abroad also provides up to $5,000 towards your study abroad program costs. The application typically opens in the fall. It opens in August and is due in September, or maybe July, and then is due in September. And then the spring deadline opens actually in November and is due like very end of January or beginning of February. Okay, so one to keep in mind if you're planning ahead in the future. And then Freeman Asia is for if you're studying abroad to an Asian country, a participating Asian country in this program. And their website has a list of those countries. And it has to be for at least 8 weeks long, your study abroad program. Gilman and Fund for Education Abroad don't care how long you're studying abroad. Freeman Asia, it does have to be for at least 8 weeks. And that actually provides you with up to $7,000 in funding towards your study abroad program. Each one of these awards is similar, and the application essays are similar, but they are not the same. And the application processes are a bit different though. Regardless, though, our office would support you on these applications as well. So as you move forward, if you have any questions, if you're seeking guidance or need feedback on your essays, you can contact me directly at shay.masterson@asu.edu, which is on the screen right now. And you can also schedule an advising appointment with me for a Gilman intake or a Gilman draft review by going to our website, onsa.asu.edu. Okay. That is all I have for you this afternoon. I've addressed all of the questions that have come through the chat, but if you have additional questions, I will stick around now, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you again so much for your time. And if you don't have any other questions, we're done, so you are free to